What is the true cost of living in Lake Oswego?
You might have heard that it's expensive, but is it worth it?
Stay tuned for a real-life perspective on what it truly costs to live in Lake Oswego. Before we jump into it, I just want to remind you, give me a call. My number is right down there. If you have any questions about moving to Lake Oswego, I'm a local real estate agent, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Let's jump into it.
Today we're walking through a really special little pocket neighborhood in Lake Oswego, Oregon, on the backside of Cook's Butte. A lot of these homes have really impressive views of the valley, Mount Hood, Lusher Farm. It's just a really neat little area.
Yeah, I love this little pocket in Lake Oswego, and I'll turn the camera right around here and you can see these cool views right there. That's Lusher Farm right over there. And there's also some peekaboo views of Mount Hood as well.
Today we are talking about cost of living, and I really think that your perspective on cost of living is relative. It depends on where you're coming from. And so I think it's important to start off by saying, what is our filter for thinking about cost of living? We ended up here in part because of the cost of living compared to the Los Angeles area where we were coming from. We have friends or family all throughout Southern California, in the Bay Area, in Seattle, the Midwest, Texas, Denver. So I do feel like we have a pretty far-reaching perspective on what it costs to live in a variety of places. But it's going to come down to where you're coming from and what you are looking for and what you have to compare it to.
And in this video, we're going to give you some facts that's the same for everybody, but also it's a very personalized experience on, how much do you spend? Do you spend a lot on groceries? Do you drive nicer cars? A lot of that comes down to personal choice, but we're going to give you a nice little foundation, just kind of basing on what it's like for our lives living here in Lake Oswego.
We're coming at this from a real estate perspective. Obviously, we help people buy, sell, invest in real estate, and housing is generally the biggest expense, the biggest category for people. So just let's get right to the point. What does it cost to own a home here?
So the median home price right now in Lake Oswego is about $840,000, and that's up about 20% year over year. It basically means from last year, it was 20% cheaper to buy a house here in Lake Oswego than it is right now today. And it doesn't show any signs of letting up. Right now is definitely a good time to still buy.
Okay, so $840,000, that helps me to think about it. But I think another question on people's mind is really probably what is the baseline? In order to have, a nice home in the area, what's the bottom that I could get in at?
So Lake Oswego actually does have a lot of condos that you can choose from as well. So if a house is too expensive, you can go the condo route and still have the same benefit of all the amenities that are here and the schools and the town and just the experience. And the condos start anywhere from $250,000 on up for one bedroom condo to two bedrooms, getting into the 300s and up. And there's a lot of condos actually in the northwest side of Lake Oswego. And then when it comes to the actual houses, you can get a ranch style, older 3-2 house in the 600s still right now in Lake Oswego. Just to throw some stats at you, the housing index for the US, it's 100 for the affordability index. So for housing, the average in the US right now, say, is 100, right? So in Portland right now, it's 123 for housing, and in Lake Oswego, it's 160.
So obviously, $840 is expensive for a home, and when you look at a lot of parts of the United States, they're much lower than that. But there's this funny thing that happens where I think when you compare a really nice home in a nice school district in a great community, it's often more expensive than you think it's going to be when you're coming from a higher cost of living area. So, and where my mind goes with that is that when you compare Lake Oswego to much of the Midwest, it's going to seem more expensive here. But before we moved here, we actually considered moving to Carmel, Indiana, where my family is. And if you just look numbers to numbers, Indianapolis is going to be a lot less expensive than Lake Oswego. But then when you start digging into the area in Indianapolis with the school district that you want, with the features and the amenities that you want, you know, it wasn't that much less expensive at that time to buy a place there than here. That's why it gets so tricky, I feel like, when you're just looking at these numbers and these indices.
No, that's a good point. Because if you move somewhere cheaper, you might have the tendency to buy a bigger home versus coming somewhere that's a little bit more expensive. You might scale back on that, but you might still spend close to the same amount of money.
So housing is one really important component. And then can you talk a little bit about some of the things that go along with that, like taxes?
Yeah, so the taxes in Lake Oswego are about 1.6% of the cost of your home.
Property taxes.
Your property taxes are about 1.6%. So the state of Oregon is 1% is the state, is the baseline. And then each city can kind of put on its own layers in the form of bonds. And so that's what Lake Oswego has basically done, is the taxes have gone up quite a bit from the 1%. We're at about 1.6 right now. And a little, not so much known if you didn't live here, so they just voted on increasing the property taxes again a little bit by as much as 10% based on the schools. So it's another school bond that's going through, and it's great if you have young kids that are going to be going through these schools in the next few years and on, because they're basically rebuilding a lot of the schools. Half of the schools have been kind of rebuilt, and the other half they're in the process of just got budget approval, and they're going to be rebuilding those, which is great if you have kids that are going to be using that school system. They're going to be retrofitted for like earthquakes and just updating the computer systems, everything. And in some cases, they're doing brand new schools.
Okay, good point, because I think, in a future video, we can get into comparing cost of living in Lake Oswego compared to Portland itself.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to one of the things you're getting here for your money, both in the actual price of your home and then taxes, is a great school district.
And just to give you a little real world example, our own home taxes are based on a property value of about $750,000, and our taxes are about $11,000. And so that's also capped at going up 3% a year, again, unless that city adds a bond, which is usually for schools.
Okay, so maybe we could just do a little rapid fire of other cost categories and what we've experienced so far. So my perspective on things like eating out is that it's certainly more affordable here than other big cities. What would you say?
Food definitely seems a little cheaper when you go out to eat. It doesn't seem to be as such a premium to me, especially from LA. There's also no sales tax in Oregon. That's right, no sales tax. So anything you buy, any kind of goods, groceries, computers, anything you buy online too, there's no sales tax. So that is a real savings. We do have a state income tax. It's close to 10%, but again, no sales tax, so that is a savings. If you'd rather go to Washington, they have no state income tax. That's a whole nother video. But this one in Lake Oswego, yes, we do have state income tax.
Then I think part of what this comes down to is how you like to spend your time, and what you spend money on wherever you're coming from. One of the things that we love about Lake Oswego, and this is also probably related to our stage of life with small kids, is that there are so many wonderful parks and really free community activities and gathering places that we tend to spend a lot of time at. So we spend time outdoors, we spend time hiking, blackberry picking down the street from our house, visiting the farmers market on Saturday mornings, things that are free to do.
That is one of the great aspects of living in Lake Oswego, is you really will save a lot of money if you like to do all those things. And there's so many activities, like Bri just mentioned, that the city provides, and you have access to parks, trails, river, lake. You really do end up saving quite a bit. We also have little kids, so we don't get out as much, but you do have a little savings there, that's for sure, no matter where you live. Another great thing about living here is the climate. So you end up saving on utilities compared to a lot of other places. The winters are more mild. You might not be running the heat as much. It's typically in the winter, it's in the 40s. Then in the summertime, it's in the 80s for a lot of the summer to the 70s. And you might not run that AC a lot. A lot of the homes don't have air conditioning. Here in Lake Oswego, almost all the homes are gonna have central air.
Another little aspect of the climate, you and I have talked about this, is that in the winter when it's really rainy, we like to have friends over for dinner or for brunch or, to hang out. And so that's also just a more cost-effective way to spend your time than, hitting up a restaurant. Another great thing about just the location of Portland and the Pacific Northwest is that there are so many beautiful destinations within driving distance of here. So, getting to the beach in a couple of hours, skiing, the Puget Sound area, all the natural beauty, that in terms of just vacations, you can get away with not spending a lot of money and just traveling around near to home.
Now check out that view.
Portland is really the last great affordable city on the West Coast. When you think about what you have to compare it to with the Bay and Seattle and Southern California just having gotten so out of reach for many people.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
And I think one of the things that I've been thinking about, especially since the pandemic started, is I think in the past, part of what might have kept it affordable is the job opportunities here. So, there are some big name companies here, and there is good work here, but it was limited compared to some of those other cities. Whereas now, because so much work has the opportunity to be done virtually, especially because of the pandemic, we're seeing a lot more people moving here from some of those more expensive places for the lifestyle. And so I wonder if that is going to raise the cost of living here over time.
I definitely think it will. It's just a matter of supply and demand. And the supply of housing is really short across America right now, especially on the West Coast. So yes, Portland is definitely the most affordable city on the West Coast with an international airport. And for what you get, it's really amazing here, and it's still a great time to move here and buy a house. There's still a lot of room, I think, for the prices to go up. Another big portion of everybody's cost of living is childcare and school. Here in Lake Oswego, we have great public schools. It's #1 in the state, so that's a cost you don't have to have if you're used to sending your kids to private school. If you do want to do that, there are a lot of great private schools here in Lake Oswego, but if you want the public option, it's here and it's free. Your tax dollars are paying for it. Now, when it comes to kids that are before school age, under kindergarten, preschool, I'll let Bri fill you in a little bit about that, where our kids go at this great place called ILA.
So for preschool for our daughter, we've been paying about $12.50 a month. I know that's going up to $14.50 next year, so costs are going up here. We have a nanny for our son, and interestingly, we actually pay quite a bit more for our nanny here than we did in Los Angeles. So that expense has gone up a lot for us. I think that's probably more of a function of the pandemic and everything that did to childcare than it is, a comparison between cities.
Right, and that's about $25 an hour for that. Our older daughter going to ILA, her preschool, to me that felt like a lot of money, and it's all kind of relative, but the school, it's really good. It's a French immersion school, and they're accredited through the French school system as well, and they get a lot of French teachers that come over on visas for like 3 years. So it does feel to me like a really good value.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, her teachers have multiple master's degrees, and it's such a nurturing environment. The ethos of the school and the director of the school just got his PhD in education. The care that they put into it really does feel worth it to me. Absolutely, I agree. And then I would also just mention that within the City of Lake Oswego School District, there are preschool options. And so those are more affordable, but they are more limited in terms of the care. So,
and they go about 3 days a week.
For younger kids, it's 3 days a week. And then for pre-K, it's 4 days a week, but it's a shorter day. And so it just depends on what you're looking for.
Next, we have transportation. So if you live in Lake Oswego, you're gonna need a car. There's no mass transportation here. In Portland they do, they have the MAX, and that's awesome if you live anywhere near that. But in Lake Oswego, definitely need a car. We don't have any public transportation. There is the bus. One more hidden cost, that if you want lake access, there's about 3,000 homes here that have lake easements. And so when you buy a house and it comes with a lake easement, you can decide then if you want to join that easement. And if you do, there's a one-time joining fee, and they start out at about $2,500 and go up to around $3,500. And then you have the monthly fee of whether you have a kayak or a paddleboard, and there's a small monthly fee for those as well.
So all this comes down to you and your preferences and what your values are really when it comes to how you spend your money. I think one item that I would mention is that anytime you're living in a more affluent community like Lake Oswego, there can be a tendency to look around at how everyone else is spending their money, and you're gonna see that there are plenty of luxury cars, and there are plenty of people here who, you know, have an expensive ski vacation or some of those outward markers of success and affluence. And so you have to be aware of that and what your tendency is in terms of, I would say, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's going to go for wherever you live. And again, it comes down to yourself and what your own expenses are, what you enjoy.
All of this is really personal. It depends on you, your budget, your values. So reach out and have a conversation about what you're looking for, and Erin can help make sure that you find something that fits within your budget and that really provides the lifestyle that you're looking for.
If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and like and subscribe, and you'll be notified when new videos come out. Bye bye.
You got really good job.